I'm 34-year-old freelance editor Olivia Hartman, and until recently I was sufficiently broke that the invitation came in a pastel blue envelope that was laden with fake elegance, making even the thrift store feel like a luxury. The Hartman family, reunion commemorating 20 years, was written in embossed gold letters. A catered weekend at a rented estate in upstate New York attire, celebrating years of togetherness. I gazed at the card's heart as I read, "Code Cocktail Casual RSVP required." I had reasons for not seeing the majority of my family for 5 years. Heartbreak, financial difficulties, and the kind of messiness that folks like my sister Madison shunned like the plague illumination. But the true cause of my fatigue with the family disappointment, but something about this invitation seemed off. Either the formality of the tone or I nearly threw it in the trash since I thought this would be the reunion to remember. Until I turned the card over and saw that on Saturday night there will be a family legacy presentation and all members are encouraged to attend. The phrase legacy struck me hard because I spent the majority of my life didn't have one before we go on. So I'd like to know if you've ever missed a family gathering because you were unable to. If you've ever had to prove yourself to someone who rejected you, please leave a remark below. I was the quiet one growing up, so trust me when I say that you're not alone. The girl with the huge ideas, the bookworm, and the used shoes that my parents, Janet and Madison, was always Madison, and William Hartman was proud of him in a subdued manner. She was a cheerleader, business school genius, and now a branding expert. In the meantime, I took out student loans and had a consultant with a fancy condo and a fiancé who runs hedge funds. I worked as a freelancer while sharing apartments to study literature, and I consumed a lot of rice and frozen peas, but they didn't recognize that road, particularly following my divorce from Aaron 3 years ago. It was tragic and fervently poetic. We had imagined that he was also a writer. Creative freedom, but eventually the paycheck stopped pouring in. He left a stack of overdue bills and a message, but he gave no explanation or farewell. Just, "I can't do this anymore." That was the lowest point, and I worked evenings for the following year. I hardly spoke to my family during the day while editing manuscripts at a cafe, though Madison occasionally texted them. "I hope all is well with you." Mom sent job links, and Dad inquired whether I had considered getting a real job. However, I was aware of the subtext that you failed once more. Didn't realize that something had changed covertly behind the scenes over the past 18 months. But nobody knew I'll talk about how the reunion weekend came sooner than I thought it would. I just came up. I didn't confirm the RSVP. The mansion was covered with growing ivy. Everyone was surrounded by walls, majestic staircases, white tents, and fairy lights. Uncles, aunts, second cousins, and the entire extended Hartman clan were all dressed up there. I wore a navy blue dress that I had purchased for $8 at a Brooklyn thrift store, although it had a minor tear. It was like walking Pinterest boards. My shoes were immaculate, but they scuffed my hair at the hem, which I had hand-stitched. Normally put in a bun for ease of use, it was done in gentle curls that morning. Even applied lipstick, which is uncommon, as I made my way to the entrance. Saw Madison with her typical group of friends close to the mimosa bar. Observed me and arched an eyebrow, saying loudly, well, still broke, huh?" she asked, her eyes searching me like a price tag. "Laughing software cutting or is thrift chic back?" I grinned. "Kindly, it's great to see you too, Madison." Before she could react, Uncle Rob, she blinked as though shocked that I had responded at all. I walked past them and into the ballroom, determined to stay, after sweeping in and giving her a drink. Invisible until I noticed the screen over the fireplace, centered from floor to ceiling. The Hartman legacy family impact was mentioned in a comment on the evening program at 7:00 p.m. Something twisted inside of me when they announced that their highlight reels will be played. Ella's nonprofit award and Madison's TEDx talk likely included footage of Grandpa Nobody anticipated seeing me on the screen when I cut the ribbon at Kenya's first Hartman Foundation school, but I understood what was about to happen, and when. That reel began to play. Every single whisper, every sneer, the truth they didn't know was going to swallow up every judgment. I hadn't finished yet, but by 6:45 p.m., the ballroom was alive with fake laughing, and the family celebration was in full swing, with the sound of champagne flutes clinking, and I had turned into everything they had anticipated. In the background, my mother waved me over once. "I'm delighted you made it, Olivia." My dad gave me a one-arm embrace, and she resumed talking about cruise packages without Darren, asked if I was still proofreading, and I nodded and made the correction. I had never felt more invisible, but he was already checking his watch quietly. Madison made a show of the expensive appetizers at the buffet for dinner, which had French titles and no spice, flashing a ring so big it could have been an aeroplane beacon as she announced her engagement to Preston amid the cheers of cameras. When the MC tapped the microphone, she flashed her moment once more. Until the lights went down, I was all but forgotten to announce the Hartman Legacy presentation. Please focus on the screen as we honor the Hartman family's 20-year heritage and their accomplishments. Grandpa cutting a red ribbon on the first slide was just what I imagined in terms of leadership and love. At a podium, Senator Madison smiled as Aunt Carla shook hands, waited while sipping my drink, and then a new video started and the screen went blank. It began with gentle piano music and occasionally displayed white lettering on a black screen. Legacy is created in silence until it speaks for itself. Madison's mother's smile wavered, appeared perplexed, so I sat motionless as the video started playing snippets from a digital. Few of them would be able to identify the voice of a narrator on Bookverse. Arrived through the world's fastest-growing Bookverse, a professional, serene, and proud editorial community with 8 million monthly readers, more than 40,000 writers, and a single goal: to elevate voices that Olivia Hartman Madison created the problem in 2021, and her head jerked in my direction. Began with a single laptop, a lady who thought that words might change the world, and a one-bedroom flat in Brooklyn. Construct bridges. My face showed up on the screen in an old candid photo of me at my small, with a cold cup of tea and sticky notes surrounding the kitchen table. Gasps echoed throughout the room, and I remained motionless for just 18 several months. Bookver conducted more than 300 virtual author events in collaboration with 120 publishing firms and introduced taking screenshots of articles that a Brooklyn lady flashes while writing scholarships in underrepresented neighborhoods. Forbes 30 under 35. I'm 34 years old and an independent editor. Until recently, I was so broke that the invite came in a pale blue envelope that was heavy with fake grace. Even the thrift store felt like a treat. The Hartman family gathering, which was celebrating 20 years, was written in raised gold letters. Years of being together, a catered weekend at a rented farm in upstate New York, and a dress code. I stared at the card heart for a while. The dress code was party casual. I thought it had been 5 years since I saw most of my family. I had reasons. Problems with money, heartbreak, and the kind of chaos in life that people like my sister Madison tried to escape like the plague, but the real reason I was fed up with being a family sadness. There was still something off about this call. Maybe it was the formal tone or the feeling that this would be the gathering to remember. I almost threw it away, until I turned the card over and saw, "There will be a family legacy presentation on Saturday night, and everyone is welcome to attend." Being told that word hit me like a punch because I've spent most of my life I didn't have one before we went on. Have you ever missed a family event because you just couldn't make it? Leave a comment below if you've ever had to show your worth to people who didn't think you were good enough. Like button. Trust me, you're not the only one who was quiet as a child. The girl with lots of books, big ideas, and used shoes. My parents, Janet and William Hartman, was proud of Madison always, but in a quiet, steady way. She was the top girl in high school and now works as a branding. I took out college loans while she was a consultant with a nice condo and a fiancé who runs hedge funds. To pay for school, I freelanced while living in flats with other people. I ate a lot of rice and frozen peas, but they didn't mind. Understand that path, especially since I got divorced 3 years ago and married Aaron. It was emotional, poetic, and a disaster. He was also a writer, which is something we dreamed of, but had to live from paycheck to paycheck until the money quit coming in. It was just I on the note and a stack of unpaid bills. He didn't say anything or say goodbye. This is the worst thing I've ever done. For the next year, I worked nights at a cafe while editing manuscripts during the day. I didn't talk to my family much, and Madison sent me the odd text. "I hope everything is okay with you." Mom sent me job links, and Dad asked if I had thought about real work. But I knew what they were trying to say. You failed again. Wasn't sure what was going on. No one knew that something had changed in the last 18 months, but I'll get to that. The reunion weekend came up faster than I thought it would. RSVP. I didn't check, I just showed up. The estate was huge and covered in ivy, walls, grand stairs, white tents with fairy lights strung around them, and everyone was... There were uncles, aunts, second cousins, and the rest of the Hartman family dressed up. It looked like I was walking on Pinterest. I wore a $8 navy blue dress I got at a Thrift store in Brooklyn. It had a small tear in it. I hand-stitched the hem. My shoes were clean, but my hair was dirty. My hair, which is usually pulled back into a bun for ease of use, was shaped in soft curls that morning. It was a rare sight for me to wear lipstick, but as I walked toward the door, I did. Saw Madison near the champagne bar with her usual group of friends. She saw me and raised an eyebrow. "Well, well," she said in a loud voice, enough for everyone close to say, "Still broke, huh?" Her eyes looked at me like I was a price. "Tag, or is Thrift chic back in style?" I laughed and smiled as I cut the program. "Thank you very much, Madison, and it's great to see you too." She blinked as if she couldn't believe I answered before she could. "Uncle Rob." I walked past them and into the hall, where I was set on staying. I swept in and gave her a drink. I didn't see the screen from floor to ceiling above the fireplace until I saw it. There was a note on the evening show that said, 700 p.m., the Hartman Legacy Family Impact. Real. Something in me told me they were going to show their highlight clips, Madison's TEDx talk, Cousin Ella's award for her charity work, and probably video of Grandpa I was in Kenya cutting the ribbon on the first Hartman Foundation School. No one thought I would be on that screen, but I was. Everyone knew what was going to happen, and when that reel started to play, every whisper sneer, every decision was about to be wiped out by the truth, which they didn't know about. What I hadn't done yet by 6:45 p.m., the hall was full of forced laughter, and the sound of champagne flutes clinking meant that the family gathering was in full swing, and I had become exactly what they thought I would be. In the distance, my mom waved me over once. "Olivia, sweetheart, I'm glad you made it." Then she went back to talking about cruise deals without Darren. My dad gave me a hug with only one arm, asked if I was still doing that reviewing thing. I said, yes, and fixed it. Softly, but he was already looking at his watch. I'd never felt so lost. The dinner was a spread of expensive appetizers with French names that didn't have any seasoning. Madison made a show of when she told everyone she was engaged to Preston by flashing a ring so big it could have been a plane signal. Cameras rolled. Flashed her moment again by the time the host tapped the mic. To talk about the Hartman legacy, presentation, and then I was almost ignored until the lights went down. Please look at the screen as we honor the Hartman family's 20 years of history. Love and leadership. The first slide showed exactly what I thought it would show. Grandpa cutting a red ribbon. Aunt Carla shaking hands with Senator Madison while she smiles at a microphone. Drank some water and waited. The screen went black, and a new movie started. It started with soft piano music and a black screen that sometimes had white words on it. Legacies are built in silence until they talk for themselves. Mom. Madison's smile broke. I stayed still as the video started to play clips from a digital camera. Some of them would know the voice of a narrator on Platform 1. Came out of the job, calm and proud, bookverse, the world's fastest-growing, over 40,000 writers make up the editorial community, which has 8 million readers every month, and a goal to give voices a voice. Olivia Hartman started the matter in 2021, and Madison's head snapped toward me. Bookver began in a Brooklyn apartment with just one notebook and a woman who thought words could change the world. Build bridges. My face showed up on the screen in an old picture of me when I was very young. Sticky notes and a cold cup of tea were all around the kitchen table. Gasps went through the room. I hadn't moved in 18 months. In just 6 months, Bookver teamed up with 120 publishing companies, held more than 300 virtual author events, and underrepresented groups can get writing scholarships. A woman in Brooklyn flashed headlines that caused problems. Publishing in the standard way, Forbes 30 under 35, Olivia Hartman. I didn't blink when Booker raised $12 million and changed the rules of the game. I couldn't, but my hands were shaking a little in my lap. Kept going. This is the memory of someone who was once called just a bookworm. The woman who turned sadness into a goal to reach the girl they ignored at the dinner table is now building. One where everyone can sit down. The screen went black again. Then my face showed up on a video clip I remembered taking 6 months ago, and I thought it was only for internal use when my marketing director asked me to do it. I used to think that success meant I was told that if I could just become something amazing, they'd finally see me. I used to think that being seen as strong was important, but now I know that it's not. Know your own worth is where it all starts. The screen faded again, and a legacy isn't what they remember you for. It's what you build, the single line said. There was a pause, and then the lights came back on. The room was frozen, and my mom looked like I forgot how to breathe. My dad blinked quickly as if he was trying to figure out what had just happened. Madison just stared at me. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had changed shapes. I took up space in a room full of people. People who used to look right through me. Before I go on, tell me in the comments, have you ever shocked someone? Whoever thought you weren't important walked into a room and made them wish they had thought of you more. It turns out that the story isn't over yet. The real drama hasn't even begun. Her fiancé leaned in close and whispered something to her. She looked at him, then at me, and then stood up. No one told me she was Olivia Hartman, she snapped, as the room turned to. She tried to laugh, but her laugh was rough. This whole time you've been what? Successful in a secret way? Why not say anything, Liv? I slowly stood up. I stayed cool because I wanted to see who would treat me like a person first. Saw me as the big story, and then I left the hall, leaving. Everyone stunned and silent. The lights were still on, and it was cool outside. They weren't done talking, but neither was I. The sound of the hall doors closing behind me was sharper than I thought it would be, like the last note in a symphony. I hadn't asked for that. To act outside. The air was cool, but I was hot, and my hands were shaking, but not from shame. Or fear, but adrenaline. I didn't mean for that movie to play. It was Mark, my assistant. Who posted it at the event planner's request? It looks like she asked for help. He thought I gave my permission for any family legacy papers from all branches. As I leaned against the stone wall, I thought, maybe it was time. I was trying to slow my breathing as I stood on the porch and heard the door creak open. Olivia Madison's voice called out, "Turn around!" It was short and sharp, like a pair of kitten heels. Marble. I slowly turned around to see her standing. In the doorway, her perfect hair still in place, perfectly pinned, but her face was tense and hurt, like you might have caught her off guard. She asked, "Are your arms crossed?" I said, "Yes." Did you not hear her blink because your eyes were on something else? It looks like you built a whole company and a movement without telling anyone. I wasn't trying to hide it. I just wasn't ready to. When Madison did it, she laughed one of those fake, shocked laughs that never gets to the eyes. No, you waited for your chance. You could have told me. Could it have made a difference? I asked her as I walked toward her. Could you have? Listened without comparing or telling me how faster, better, or louder you did it. She spoke less loudly. I wanted to be proud of you. Now, but tonight I felt like a fool. It had been years since I last took a breath. That's how I felt at every family get-together and every dinner table. Every time Mom asked how your consulting was going, she didn't ask about me. Instead, she looked at you and asked. In a whisper, she told me, "You're right," which surprised me. You're absolutely right. That stopped me in my tracks. I've built this whole family around looks. She went on to talk about class and who has the biggest or flashiest ring or title. Tonight you did something that none of us did, I told her, and she nodded and gave me a sad face. Before I could answer, the door opened again, giving me a smile and maybe some real meaning. This time it was Preston Olivia. He asked if we could talk for a minute. Scared me and made me look at her. She nodded and moved out of the way. Preston came up to him with his hands in his pockets as he disappeared into the hallway's dark. I had no idea you were that Olivia Hartman, he said. I started to use book verse. He said, You're a writer for a finance blog, which made me raise an eyebrow. I've been following your work for more than a year. The private features, community moderation, and focus on stories make it great. Smart. I didn't say anything about what you did tonight, It changed the mood of the whole event. It wasn't about what people were wearing or who they were engaged to for once. Who it was about something real, I asked. Why are you telling me this? He seemed sketchy because he slowly said, Madison isn't who I thought she was. And there, it was. She's a good person, but her world is curated. Everything has to be polished and filtered. But I saw you walk in tonight wearing a dress from a thrift shop. Still run the whole room, which isn't often. I felt an old urge rise to the surface. I felt the need to say sorry for making things awkward, but I pushed it down. I said, I know, he replied quickly, and I'm not trying to compare the two of us. I just had to play with him and say it. He nodded and left, leaving me. I was back by myself under the stars, and inside I could hear music starting up again. The party was starting up again, but the mood had changed, and I could feel it from here. Before I go on, have you ever had a moment when everything turned around and the people who did judge you had to face who you really are? Share it in the comments, because those times will stay with you. I blinked when my phone rang. It was a message from Marcus. You're trending. There was a link to a video of the Hartman Legacy clip attached. It had already been watched 180,000 times in just 2 days. For hours, people were leaving notes on this woman's story. Chill's proof that you don't have to scream to be strong. Afterwards, the one that stopped me in my tracks made me feel motivated. I wish my family could see me like this. Olivia, thank you. I stared at the screen, the words a blur. I hadn't just seen them. I thought I put the phone back in my bag, and this time when I went back to the hall. But it wasn't because they had to prove something. Instead, they did it because they felt strong. A woman who finally knew how much she was worth, and that made everything different. I walked back into the hall like I didn't have anything to prove, because it was the first time in years that I really didn't. My once sharp and guarded laughing was now. The same people who had barely noticed me during appetizers spoke to me with doubt. Were all smiles and interest all of a sudden. I'd seen this kind of shift happen before. People who don't care about you when you're having a hard time are the first to change your story when you're successful. Aunt Doreen was the first to do this. Olivia called out, "Pounce, Olivia, Olivia," and grabbed my hands. Why didn't you tell us? About your small business? We would have loved to help you. Your business isn't that small. I replied with a tight smile. No more, but thank you. Oh, I just love female, so empowering for entrepreneurs, she gushed. Her tone made me feel like I had won a cake contest, not built a huge online business. Mom stood across the room, stiffly by the dessert table, her eyes following me around like a hawk. She hadn't said a word since the video when I walked up to her. "Hi, Mom," she said slowly. "That video was impressive," she said. "Thank you." There was a long pause. "You could have told us," she said, her voice shaking. "Had no idea." "Yeah, I guess that was kind of the point." She jerked, then calmed down. "Has this been what you've been doing all this time?" I asked. "Why didn't you do it sooner? Have you ever just asked for help?" That hung in the air for a second because when I was having a hard time, you would tell me things like, "You chose that path," or "Maybe it's time to get serious." "Mom, you didn't see me. You saw someone else." "A mistake you couldn't fix," I told her. She opened her mouth and closed it again. "I was asking for help. There's a difference," she said. She stared at the floor. She whispered, "I'm sorry." Her fingers getting tighter around her wine glass. A lot of people almost didn't hear it. It wasn't perfect, but it was something from the stage. When Uncle Rob said the dance floor was open, people started to slowly make their way to the middle of the room, where laughing came back. This time, it was lighter, but still tinged with worry and interest. And then there was Madison. When she took the mic before the next song, I want to say how proud we are of Olivia for that surprise hit. Story. That was the backhanded praise and some. People were nice enough to clap. People looked at her and then at me, not sure what to do. Madison smiled widely. It's not often that you can see emotion in Prophet align, is it? I walked slowly up to her and gently took the mic from her. She didn't fight it, but her smile got a little smaller. "Thanks, Madison. I told the crowd that it's true that success isn't always easy. Some people looked at us funny or strange, especially those closest to us, lifted. But I want to make it clear that my story isn't meant to show that anyone is wrong." I looked straight at Madison and said, "It's about proving myself right." It was then that I put down the mic and walked away. The only approval that matters is your own. Hearts were beating fast on stage, but regular applause, not the loud kind that comes from being nice, but the kind that people have when they're thinking, "That's when I saw her grandmother." Ruth, she had stayed in the far corner all night and was mostly quiet. While she drank tea and watched, her eyes met mine, and she gave me the tiniest nod. She tapped the seat next to her as I got close and said, "You've always been the sharp one." I smiled in a sharp, quiet way, and you knew it. "I already knew how much you were worth, sweetheart, so it's nice to see the others pulling behind." I blinked back. Sudden tears of all the people I wanted to be proud of her. She had never made me feel Madison has always been the peacock. "Big," Madam said. "You're the hawk," she said. That made me laugh. "People don't see you coming until it's too late. Closer, but don't let them make you angry. Live, and don't mistake silence for loss or applause for victory. Tonight, love hit me harder than anything else." Before I go on, have you ever had someone finally see you when it meant most? Tell us about it in the comments or tag the person who helped you, because one person getting it can make all the difference. When the band started playing again, couples swayed on the floor for a short time. Any other group. But everything had changed on the inside because now they wanted to know what else I had been working on in secret. And I was just getting started when I woke up the next morning. Not even sleep could help me get over the emotional hangover I had when I woke up in my hotel room. My phone was buzzing again. Overnight, the movie had more than 1 million views, and Marcus texted me to let me know. Bookver servers were able to handle the crowd, and many companies are calling them. I rubbed my eyes and opened Instagram to find that someone had shared a clip of my last night's mic line. Your own confirmation is worth chasing. It had already been shared by a number of well-known empowerment accounts I follow. The number of calls and emails had doubled, but the notes from stole the show. Strangers, I cried as I watched this. I needed to hear that I've been. No longer will I hide my business from my family out of fear of being judged. Made me feel like I wasn't alone. And then there was one direct message that stopped me in my tracks. Me cold from a message from Aaron. Oh, good job, Aaron. I knew you'd find your voice, and I'm sorry I didn't stay long enough to hear it. Ex-husband. I looked at his message for a long time and almost deleted it. Part of me that was older and deeper wanted to answer, but I haven't yet. I turned off my phone and opened the curtains. The golden, soft light of morning spilled across the rugs. That afternoon I felt stable for the first time in years. As I checked out of the hotel, I walked by the bar. Madison saw me for the first time live, where a group of family members were gathering. "Can we talk?" she asked as she got up from the couch. She didn't look smug this time. We went outside to the garden when she looked tired. Where the bar table from yesterday was still empty and stained with rings of glass, she shook her hands together, which wasn't like her at all. "I owe you an apology," she said. I had to wait years for this. Not just for the comments or the mic, thing for a lot. I let the spotlight make me look like someone I don't like, and I pushed you out of the way without understanding how hard you were working. I was trying to earn a seat at the table, but I wasn't. I said so, was trying not to need it, and she agreed. "That's even worse," she said. "You feel like it wasn't even yours to begin with." There was silence between us like fog. "I'm not happy, Olivia," she said. "Not really Preston and I." She stopped. I raised an eyebrow and said, "That's strange." She half laughed and then turned. "Seriously, you're the first person in your family to break the mold and build something that isn't based on." I looked at her for a long time and thought, that took guts. She was my sister and my competition. I told my image, "You don't have to live in the version of yourself they made." She looked at him with tears in her eyes and asked, "Do you think it's—" "No, I meant it, but it's not too late. You have to want the truth more than the picture." She wiped her eyes and smiled at me so freely that it almost hurt. "I'd like to get to know you better," she said. "Not compete, just get to know you." "Be nice," I said, feeling something shift and an old bitter feeling open up. Grip before we left the yard, she pulled something out of her purse and gave it to me. "Is it an RSVP card?" Said I'd have a group of real women entrepreneurs at my next event. Stories. "I want you to be the keynote speaker." I looked at it for a while. Want someone who shops at thrift stores and doesn't hide their past? That's exactly who they are, she smiled. Want, as I drove away from the house, I thought about how this weekend would be. I saw rolling hills and walls covered in ivy. It began with sorrow, judgment, and quiet shame. But I was leaving with something else. Not justice or vengeance, but I want you to remember that you don't need their permission to do what you're about to do. You don't have to be flashy or famous to be strong. When you're asked to make something unique, the table doesn't always need to be turned. When you finish, they'll hear the sound 2 weeks after there was no big change in life after the meeting. There was no parade or sudden approval. From all over the world. But something had changed inside me, and that the win was the most important thing. I was back in Brooklyn, sitting at my favorite, the coffee shop, had the same window table, broken mug, and almond croissant. But for the first time, I wasn't writing to escape. I was writing because it helped me breathe. My email folder was still full of news stories. I got a lot of requests and magazine pitches, but I wasn't going after any of them because I thought I'd already done enough. Chasing things in my life, now they're coming to me. Respect chances I used to beg for all of these things in places where no one even noticed I was there. Then, on a Wednesday morning, my Madison's doorbell rang. She was holding a green shopping bag full of lemons and a single box of dry pasta. "I brought dinner," she said. You cook? He asked. She laughed and said, Not very well, but I'm trying. She cried twice when we were making lemon garlic pasta in my tiny kitchen. She couldn't figure out how to zest the lemon, and she once got olive oil on her clothes by accident. Shirt, but it wasn't dramatic. It was true to life. During dinner, she told me straight out that she and Preston had broken off their engagement, which he said he didn't sign up for. A woman who was still getting to know herself. It sounds like he doesn't know what change looks like. I got it. He just didn't want to wait for it. I didn't try to fix it. I just listened. And somewhere between the awkward clinks of forks that didn't go together and the laughs over how overcooked the pasta was we started putting something back together. Not as rivals or even as, instead of brothers competing with each other, it was just two women learning how to be. To be honest, she stopped at the door that night before she left and said, You looked strong at the gathering that night, not because of the company or the video, but because you didn't blink when they laughed, but I did flinch inside. She did say yes. But you stood there anyway, and I saw that quiet. Then she gave me a long, real hug, the kind we hadn't had since we were together. We're kids wearing matching holiday clothes. A few days later, I went to see my parents. There. Wasn't a big fight, or the moment was perfectly healed, but awkward, as these things often are. Mom said sorry again in her own way. By giving me too much to eat, making me fix my collar, and asking me too many questions about how to invest in tech stocks, Dad didn't say much, but as I left, he led me to my car and told me, I read. You really did a great job on that book verse. Peace, kid. Then I felt proud that I didn't cry until I told you I love you. Went back to my room because it wasn't about what they said. It was about not needing them anymore before I closed. I want to tell you something about this story when you watch or listen. Reading when they talk over you at dinner. When they don't think much of you people who don't believe in your dreams. Make fun of your outfit, or forget your name when you list all of your famous cousins. You can choose to shrink or keep growing. Quietly, because one day, the truth will be too loud to ignore, and you won't have to. Prattle, you don't need to say anything. Just wear your thrift store dress with how you really laugh and how powerful you are in a quiet way because they just didn't see it right away. Enough. You've been enough ever since.